Thank you for auditing the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who doesn't like the term dad jokes. Listen, I am a father, and I love making really bad puns and stupid jokes. One's coming up. But I came to realize, it was actually my daughter who realized this a couple years ago, to her credit. As a preteen, she realized and pointed out that dad jokes is a gendered concept. The idea that this kind of silly humor, this kind of sort of intentionally cringy, jokey joke is the domain of a father and not a mother is a sort of an implication, a larger social implication that, men have a little bit more permission to be silly, to try to be funny. There's a sort of fun time dad, sad time, bad time mom implied in the term dad joke. Why am I saying this in a Charli XCX video? I'll tell you in a second. So I've tried to do something else, because this is the other thing. I'm also a professor. Je suis le prof, that's my real job. So professors also get to make those kinds of jokes. It's one of the best things about being a professor, is you have an audience for any kind of terrible pun or joke that you want to make. And in the same way that, dad jokes are sort of to a captive audience who just sort of has to put up with it and decide to make it fun, that's sort of how you are with a class as well. So let's not call them dad jokes. Let's call them prof jokes. Yes, I have just woke scolded you into not saying dad jokes. And I'm doing all of that to set up my initial thoughts on the album Crash by Charli XCX. I looked at the track list, and I looked at who produced it. And I said, in my beautiful prof joke way to myself, looks like there's too many cooks and not enough cook in the kitchen. If I were a show that edited, I would put in a laugh track right there. So I'll say it again, and I'll let you imagine the laugh track. Looks like there's too many cooks and not enough cook in this kitchen. What do I mean by that? Too many cooks implies that there are too many people producing something, right? Too many people. When I looked at the track list of all the producers, there's a ton of them. Now, mind you, my exposure to Charli XCX is fairly limited. One of my very few backwards-looking videos was I reviewed Pop 2 because I was told I needed to understand that in order to understand everything that was happening now in pop music. And then I reviewed her last album, her great COVID album, What I'm Up To Right Now, or How I'm Feeling Right Now. I don't remember what it's called, but it was one of my favorite albums of the year, and in my opinion, now that the COVID era, I would say, is basically over. COVID's not over, but the COVID era of sitting in your room and making albums and everything. I think Charli XCX's last album is the best piece of COVID content made. Right up there with Bo Burnham. But both of those albums, it's basically all A.G. Cook. A.G. Cook, the great mastermind behind most hyperpop music, sort of the spiritual grandfather as well as the primary architect of hyperpop. Hyperpop, which is defined by amazing vocal manipulations, glitchy sounds, intentionally aggravating sounds, all while still being pop. So I looked at this album list and I saw that A.G. Cook was only on there twice. And a whole bunch of other producers were on there a whole bunch of different times. Which is what led to that prof joke. Looks like there's too many cooks and not enough cook in this kitchen. Except, I'm not going to leave it there. It's a question. That's my question for you when you listen to this album. This is my question. This is my framing device for this entire review. Is that true? Is it just a joke that I came up with, and I'm going to hold on to that joke forever? But is it just a joke, or is it true? Do we need more Dylan Brady, one of the producers from 100 Gex, who's produced a fair number of Charli projects in the past? Do we need more A.G. Cook? Is this not enough of that hyperpop sound that I have come to love? And is it too much of this other stuff? So what I've noticed in listening to this album is that always as a critic, even, I'm going to be immodest, I consider myself to be a good critic. I consider myself to be interesting and not to just try to pigeonhole things. But it's what you do. And it doesn't matter how good of a critic you are, how good of an observer you are. Your first instinct is going to be come up with something and have everything fit that thesis. What makes this album so interesting, and why I think that the change from the last albums to this one is a good one, why this is a good album, why I would not say there's too many cooks and not enough cook. I think this album is great the way that it is because it represents a perfect pop synthesis for the past 5 years, or 4 years that I've been reviewing pop music now. It's an amazing mixture of genre mashes. There's 90s songs that sound just like, New Jack pop from the 90s. There's a whole bunch of 80s style pop. We're also a little bit back in the 70s AM pop zone where Rex Orange County was and where The Weeknd is. And mixed in is just enough of that hyper pop and just enough of sort of Lady Gaga, Madonna sounding, Kylie Minogue sounding, multi-decade spanning style pop, that the whole album really is a perfect pop synthesis. And in order to be that, she needed that many cooks. She needed not to rely just on the cook. So even though I personally prefer the hyperpop, how I'm feeling right now is just an amazing album. I swear I got the title wrong. See, I don't have a script and I don't edit. So nowhere on my damn notes did I put the name of the actual album that I'm saying is her best album. What can you do? But I think this was a necessary evolution. I think it was a good evolution. I think that if she kept doing the A.G. Cook thing, kept doing the hyperpop thing, she ran the risk of diluting it, especially with the strength of the last album. So I see this as an expansion, as a breath, as a movement towards something which might seem regressive because it doesn't sound as futuristic and scattered as her last couple albums. But I think it is a move forward. The imagery on the album is interesting. The album cover is her in a state of undress, as appears to be almost all of her album covers. She's in a bikini on a car hood with like a little bit of blood running down her head. There's a menace to it, a kind of sexy menace, and I think her positioning on this album, and I think this is maybe what makes her so interesting, is the whole album is filled with what I call sexy threats. But they're sexy threats that you sort of want to be a promise. And I don't think it's just straight up bad girl stuff. It doesn't feel to me like she's trying to say like, you can't hang with me and I'm going to break your heart and I'm going to destroy you. It's just a bunch of sexy threats and you hear them and then you imagine someone telling them to you and you imagine yourself going, I hope that's true. Mixed in with that is a lot of heartbreak, a lot of old relationships, and then, especially on the back half, beautiful sincerity. Beautiful sincerity. The second half of this album, with one exception, is near perfect. It's just great. And it's really, I think, because of these little notes of sincerity that she's letting in, and especially ending with just an amazing piece of existential horror, which I'll get into. So, let me talk about the album more in specific. This is my mug, by the way. You can buy it on Patreon. Not Patreon. On Spring. You can click the link. It's cool, right? Okay. I'm going to show you an example song. It's called Lightning. My favorite track on the album, and it's not even close. It's produced by Charli XCX. I didn't pronounce that properly. Looking up his credits, he's done a lot of songs for Charli XCX in the past. And this song is just a masterpiece of movement. So movement, when I talk about movement in a song, it's like this feeling of like you start one place and you end somewhere else. You feel like you're going. I often think about the new Star Wars movies, like the movies from the 90s and the 2000s, the prequels, where George Lucas is able to take you from sort of like planet to planet to planet to planet until you like turn around at the end of the movie and you barely remember where you started. This has that kind of movement. And I just love it. I mean, it has this great, weird atmosphere at the start with vocals with just a little bit of reverb. But then before the chorus, the vocals now have like a full vocoder effect, a robot effect, And then the chorus becomes this completely full 80s instrumentation, which reminds me of like The Weeknd and reminds me of Sheena Easton. The whole thing, maybe it's because it's lightning and it reminds me of the song Thunder, is sort of like an Imagine Dragons song. If an Imagine Dragons song wasn't at all annoying. It has that kind of grand scope to it. It's epic scope. I like Imagine Dragons, by the way. Feel free to hate me in the comments, unsubscribe. and unlike. That's fine. I love the way the song moves, the way that vocoder effect comes into the second chorus, and then just this weird sort of instrumental-y bridge part where like all of a sudden we have like Latin rhythms and like very 80s synth horn, you know, ban, ban, and like a little instrumental break, which is almost like that kind of 70s AM feel that everyone's been, you know, chasing after since The Weeknd came out with it. But then there's like a Spanish guitar and this weird voice, and then all of a sudden we get a hyperpop section where a voice gets super cut up and abstracted all over the place, and it's all poppy and weird. And then in the back there's like marimbas and these more Latin rhythms, and we're sort of back in the sort of Gloria Estefan 80s sound. It's so many things at once. It's this pop synthesis this whole album's been working towards, and it's just a great example of how good pop music can be, how complex it can be, how it can be both this backwards looking retro thing that pop has been doing for 50 years, 30 years, and forward hyper pop futuristic stuff mixed in with just great anthemic pop. What a great song. I'm now going to go through the rest of the album a little bit quicker. I'm going to start off with the first track, Crash, which is produced by A.G. Cook. I like to sprinkle in personal details. So there's a place nearby that's a good bakery called Village Bakery, and we went there to go get an almond croissant, which is... It sucks, though. Their almond croissants are good like 50% of the time. So it's kind of a crapshoot. Sometimes they're too dry. This time they were too dry. Anyways, so we were going and we were listening to the song on the way to the bakery, and the entire time that I was ordering the food and eating the food, even though it was the first time I'd ever heard the song Crash, I had the chorus stuck in my head and I couldn't wait to get back and listen to the rest of it. That's just a sort of sign of efficient pop songwriting where you're hooked on the chorus before you even have heard it all the way through. A little bit of A.G. Cook voice trickery, you know, weird production. The drum beat here is very New Jack, you know, very Teddy Riley from the 90s. It has that feeling. And just the lyrics are this sexy threat of, you know, I'm about to crash, I'm going to take you with me. A beautiful bridge breakdown with like a whammy bar guitar solo, like an 80s... I don't know if it's supposed to be exactly like the Beat It guitar solo by Eddie Van Halen on the song Beat It, but that kind of 80s wow, wow, poppy sound, I think that's the reference here, along with tons of like, it's like 80s synthesizers with 90s snare sounds. It's very particular. Just listen to the snare, just the snare on the song Crash, and you'll hear how 90s it is. New Shapes is the next song, which is with Christine and the Queens. I don't really know who they are. I guess they've been on one of her songs before. Again, I'm sort of in the kind of Van Halen-y mode. These synth blares at the beginning remind me a little bit of a song like Jump. I mean, it doesn't sound like Jump, but just that sort of triumphant announce. And then eventually we get sort of a 90s drum machine here and more of that 90s snare. Looking at my notes, I'm astounded by how many times I wrote 90s snare, but it's a particular sound that if you just go back and listen to you know, like the top pop hits of the 90s and you just listen to the snare, these are the ones that you'll hear. I love the melody on this song, so I don't know exactly how to describe it except that it seems to keep rising, just kind of keeps rising. It's like multiple rising melodies all the way through, along with nice little production details like a little howl in the back. There's a bridge breakdown, like a breakdown in the bridge. See, there's a bridge breakdown. There's a breakdown in the bridge. I'm like the most erudite music reviewer on YouTube. So anyways, in that breakdown, you know, it's very, very quiet with just a voice. And for some reason, this reminds me a lot of Taylor Swift's pop production. I can't quite place why. Maybe you can tell me in the comments. And then there's a little bit of strange auto-tune sounds. The vocal production on this album, in general, is very interesting because it's very clearly auto-tuned and pitch-corrected. But it's neither the hyper pop, you're very aware of it, nor is it your sort of standard pop kind of hide it. It's in between there, where it's almost extreme and hyper pop, and it's almost invisible, which I haven't heard that before. It's a weird mixture where it draws attention to itself and it doesn't at the same time. it has an effect of being a good mixture between those two different tendencies. And again, part of what makes this album such a great pop synthesis. Right now I'm wondering, should I title this Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen or Perfect Pop Synthesis? But, I mean, you know what I did, and we all know what I'm going to do. Le Prof, gotta Le Prof. Next song is called Good Ones, produced by Oscar Holter. Kind of a eurythmic sounding opening, like Sweet Dreams. You know how the synth like do 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 do. This has that kind of sound, a kind of slightly pulsing 80s industrial pop. I sort of remind me, this song also is sort of like if Lady Gaga made music that didn't make me want to kill myself. I try with Lady Gaga, but I can't listen to her. It's not that she's bad. It's just I can't hear her voice without just going absolutely out of my mind. So I like songs like this because it fills a lot of that kind of vibe that I like from Lady Gaga's music without the voice. More of that menace, I wish you gave me a reason, and why do I always let the good ones go? There's an interesting mix here between this song where it's talking about letting the good ones go, like choosing the bad boys, versus the next song, Constant Repeat, where she refers to herself as a bad girl. You could have had a bad girl on your side. I like there's sort of like a couple layers to the vocal production on this next song, Constant Repeat, but there's sort of a thinness. This is one of my least favorite songs, except the end. You got me on repeat, over and over again, almost like a Shakira style singing voice. Speaking of talented singers whose voices I don't like. But I do like this ending, this super repeated ending. Next up is Beg For You with... So I've never reviewed an album by Rina Sawayama. I've never reviewed an album by her. Everybody wanted me to review her album last year, and I listened to it, and I liked it, but I just didn't have anything to say about it. Maybe I need to revisit that, because sometimes I just don't review things, and there's not like a good reason, and then I look back. Like that Porter Robinson album. Like I just didn't review it, and then I went back and listened to it again, and now I own it, and I listen to it like once a week. I like this because... I keep talking about all these different decades in the synthesis, and here we have sort of boots and cats style beat with like little harp notes, sort of more like a techno sound as opposed to a straight pop sound. But like her voice does all these interesting affectations and moves. I wrote in my notes that I was going to imitate what she does and how she sings, but realistically you don't want to hear that, and I don't want to do it. But just take a listen to the amount of like space that she puts at the end of each line, and how much she's doing sort of like stuff and doing all sorts of lilting high melodies that change throughout the verse. I also have noticed something now. Between James Blake, Rex Orange County, and now Charli XCX, there's basically a shibboleth for British singers. So shibboleth is, a word that you... I'm not going to get into it. It's a word that cannot be pronounced by somebody from a different culture. There's a whole terrible story in the Bible about it. We'll talk about it some other time. But the word is can't. So... James Blake and Charli XCX and Rex Orange County basically sing in an American accent at all times, right? You can't really tell that they're British, but none of them can sing the word can't, or they choose not to, because let's admit it, Americans, can't sounds much better than can't. Can't is sort of the most American word in terms of its pronunciation. If you ever ask a French person, what do Americans sound like when they talk? This is what they hear. Can't. And very meh. It's too early in the morning for me to do that. I think I actually pulled something in my neck. That is, I pulled something. Now you gotta smash the like bucket. So like, the fact that when they sing, even if they're singing an American accent, they're going to sing can't. And I just like that in this song. It's just something to pay attention to when you listen to British pop music. Interesting chorus, which sort of like builds, again, sort of a Lady Gaga thing here. A really nice chorus about long distance relationships. There's a weird detail in here that feels very specific. So it's a song about like not wanting to say goodbye to somebody because they're going away and you don't want to be in a long distance relationship. And let's face it, she's best when she's vulnerable. I like the cat stuff and dangerous and I'm a bad girl, but she's totally the best when she's vulnerable. She's the most attractive. I don't mean like sexy. I mean like I feel like I want to know her like an attraction to this personality that's different than like I'm gonna cut you with my love, as opposed to sort of like I've been cut by our love, you know. So this song is all based on that, and you know, obviously the idea of beg for you is in there. But she has this detail. Don't you want to kiss? Don't you want to go to the airport and kiss under the bathroom lights? So there's just a real specificity to that. And like I know what she's talking. There are weird lights in airport bathrooms. Like they look like Martin Scorsese has these like often will have like very high top lights that are very dramatic over people. And sometimes airport bathrooms have those lights. So I can imagine Charli XCX, and I don't know who she's dating, so I'll imagine her with the lead singer of Black Country New Road, because he sings a song about her on the most recent album. I imagine them kissing under those kind of spotlights, and it's a very evocative and odd detail, which I think brings this song into a little bit more of a tangible, real world as opposed to just a general, you know, pop meat grinder. And that's the thing that Charli XCX has been able to do on all the stuff I've listened to by her. She's a pop star making pop music who never feels like a pop product at no point. And it can be these little details, these little lines like kiss under the bathroom lights. Move Me is the next song. An amazing beat on this one. Besides Lightning, it's probably my favorite beat. It's kind of like rumbling, bass, drum, heavy, snare, rim hits, kind of stuttering and rumbling. It's almost like a jungle beat, you know, like British jungle music. And the way that she sings too, like just focus on the dynamics that she's able to. I mean, I've read some interviews with her where she's very deferential. She talks about how her voice isn't that good. Now she's not like that kind of singer. But listen to her phrasing. She sings the word something about the way you move me. And like she sings the word something with just total bombastic energy. But after she says you and then sings move me, the move me is like just a quiet voice, and then it builds up again. There's so much movement in her choruses and in her lines. And I love how the chorus takes out that crazy jungle drum beat, but then it comes back on the second half of it. Great production on this. Very, very well crafted song. You see, it's not too many cooks. It's okay. We can let pop stars, we can let all artists evolve, while also secretly hoping, oh, come on, I want another A.G. Cook Charli XCX album. Next song is called Baby. Definitely better than Justin Bieber's Baby, although it was weird because you can't really call a song Baby without getting the baby chorus stuck in your head. More of an 80s sound here, kind of like a funk style guitar. Going back to Michael Jackson, again, sort of like that, this sort of weird funk tight guitar that he has on some of his music. More of this promise and a threat of her sexuality, where, you know, she talks about, I'm going to love you raw. You're like, okay. But what I love is it starts off with I'ma make you mine in one of these parts of the chorus, or kind of a hook. I'ma make you mine, but then I'ma make you mine, and then at the end of the first time she sings I'ma make you mine, I'ma make you mine, I'ma make you mine, she says I'ma F you up, but she uses the F word, but I don't. I'ma F you up, I'ma F you up, I'ma F you up. And then by the last time, there's no I'ma make you mine, it's I'ma F you up. And it's that beautiful, sexy threat promise. That thromus. I just came up with that. The thromus of it. It's just great. And just, if you really just take some of really just listen carefully and you're not focusing on the sexy thromuses, there's a great instrumental part of like a rising synthesizer, and then that funk guitar, and then if you just listen. Listen with your good headphones. Not the crappy $10 headphones you got off of Amazon that are both wired and Bluetooth at the same time. It's true. You hear like just little disco strings, like full-on disco strings in the back. This is produced by Sad Pony and Justin Raisin. I don't know who they are, but it's a great job. The next song is called Stamp, which is the highlight of the album. And then the weirdest thing happened. The weirdest thing happened. The worst song on the album, and it's not even close how much I dislike this song, is the next song, which is not only produced by A.G. Cook, but also by Once the Tricks Never. like the main person behind The Weeknd's last album. And The Weeknd's last album is one of the best albums of the year, one of the best albums I've ever heard reviewing this channel. Somehow, A.G. Cook plus One Through Tricks Never plus Charli XCX resulted in this soft, simple keyboard song. Also, it's all about infidelity and about how exciting infidelity is. And I don't like infidelity. I just don't like it. I don't like it as a theme. It's just not a good song. It's the weakest track on the album. And I don't want it to be. But also, I'm kind of happy that it is. Because my initial thesis, too many cooks, not enough cook, is entirely destroyed by the fact that there's only 2 Cook songs and only one of them is good. Fortunately, the rest of the album is just smooth sailing from this point forward. The song Yuck is just great. Nice, funky bass line, low and restrained, beautiful production with these odd synthesizers that sort of remind me of like The Message by Grandmaster Flash, like that that kind of weird flangey thing, or Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney, which I still maintain is the best Christmas song of all time. And what I love particularly about this is that sincerity here. This is a theme I've never heard in a song, where the woman is loved by this man, and she doesn't want to be as loved. She doesn't want as many signs of affection. She considers it yucky. Like she rhymes puppy, yucky, lovey-dovey, sucky, I just wanted to get lucky, right? That's the whole chorus. It's all this idea that he's just way too extra, as the kids say these days. But you know, she actually likes it. She wants this affection. And that's a great theme for a song. And it's a perfect time for me to tell an oddly personal story because I have lived this. I have lived this moment. When I started dating my now wife, and if you watch this channel at all, you know I just love my wife so much. It's ridiculous and probably makes some of you happy and probably makes some of you upset because I'm so fortunate. But I know I'm fortunate, okay? So when we started dating, like 3 weeks in, we were hanging out together, and I made her some avocado toast. Okay, well, I know, but I have a special trick where I put this Japanese rice seasoning on top of the avocado. It's called furikake. I make really good avocado toast, and she was eating it, and we also had some watermelon, and like we were just having this wonderful time. And I did what a lot of happy young lovers do, and I took a lot of pictures of her, just while she was eating. And then she was going away for a little while, so I made like a slideshow movie of the pictures of her with like some music in the background, and then I sent it to her. Sky, buddy, take it easy. Yucky puppy, love. Just everything was going well in the relationship. She wasn't like just looking for a fling or whatever. It's not like I was out of absolute left field, but this was way too strong. I'm also somebody who has literally given flowers to a woman on the first date off of a dating website. Okay, like I just I go hard in the paint with like big romantic gestures. That's just the way that I am, So it was funny because her initial reaction was like very negative. It was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Easy there, sweet cakes, whatever it is the penguin says. But over time, when I didn't change, I was like, okay, she came to appreciate it and she came to love it. And then she came to realize that kind of goofy excitement, that kind of yucky, puppy-lovey feeling is how she was feeling too. So when I think of this song and I hear it, I think of that exact moment of where she realized and where I realized that I went way too far, which was just as far as I needed to go. Isn't that a fun story? Isn't that a nice little love story for you here in the middle of March? A great song. A really beautiful song. And then it leads into the next song, Used to Know Me. Oh, now we're getting a little bit more into that Charli XCX territory. Great vocal manipulation. This is just a club banger with a great dirty hook to it. I just love it. I listened to the song for the first time at the gym, even with those terrible $10 headphones that are simultaneously Bluetooth and wired. They have to be plugged in and they have to use Bluetooth at the same time. Even with those crappy headphones, I was going so much harder on this song. I'm still recovering from COVID. Like, it's still hard for me to go as hard as I like to go on the elliptical, but this song helped to push me forward. And on a sort of side note, I think this album is a great companion piece to Charli XCX's last album, the great COVID album. It does feel like she's out of COVID, like the COVID era. Obviously, COVID's not over, but the extreme quarantine is over, at least for now. There is a nice sort of interplay between these, and a song like this just feels like that party that we've wanted to have for the last couple of years. You used to know me, but you don't. Just a great, simple, happy breakup song, a Better Without You song, a very tight, quick song. And then it ends with the song Twice. Now, just one second. I meant to prepare this before I got on camera. I should basically always have this out because, you know, this is one of the most important things to my class. This is something that I always bring up to my class, to my channel. Which is Sartre and existentialism. I'll get back to this in a second. So Twice. More vocal manipulation. It seems like at the end of this album, she's sort of telling her fans who like her more hyper-pop stuff, I can still do it. These great synthesized, like super compressed, arpeggiated xylophones. I don't know. Sometimes I'm frustrated by production like this because it feels like it exceeds my ability to describe it. And this does feel sort of like a COVID song, because it's about death. But really, it's not about death with COVID. It's about existential angst. See, what the existentialists understood, and particularly Sartre in a book like Nausea, this is a whole story about a guy. And the guy starts to get nauseous just by seeing items. Just by, like, seeing a door handle or seeing a coffee cup. And it's because he's wrapped up and he's thinking about... Toby, my dog, also has existential angst. Hey, Toby, come, Toby. Anyways. Dogs. Okay, that'll get them over here. Yeah. Okay, that worked for now. So, Sartre is able to talk about this sickness that he feels. And the sickness comes from understanding his own mortality. Comes from the weight of going from nothingness into being, back into nothingness. The thing is, if you think about this stuff too much, you just go crazy. And what you have to do, what the existentialists teach us is, what some of them do, is you just have to sort of accept it and move on and appreciate the absurdity of life. So we're in this kind of mode where we can't really... Damn it. Dogs? You okay? So we're in this... I had to get another book. We're in this mode where we just have to kind of move on. And this whole song is about that. All the things I love are going to leave me. This is a pop song. All the things I love are going to leave me. It's about the pain of thought. It's about the pain of looking in the mirror. A proto-existentialist, the 17th century philosopher Blaise Pascal, talked about divertissement, which means diversion, the things that we do to divert our mind. The French word for fun, there is no direct word for fun. They've taken the English word now, but it used to be, there was no direct word for fun, was divertissement, which means diversion. Diversion from thinking about death. That's literally what they mean. And he writes about divertissement. He talks about all the things that we do. He asks, why does the king hunt? Why does the most powerful person in the world have to go out and entertain themselves? It's because everybody... Oh. Damn it. Okay. I'm going to take this downstairs. You can call everybody down. Okay. So, my brother just arrived. He brought food, which is good because I'm hungry. He actually brought almond croissants, which is going to tie into the rest of the video. So, what Pascal understood is that you have to divert yourself in order to be happy. Because if you just keep thinking about death, you'll go crazy. And he talks about this is the reason why we can't stare in the mirror and look at ourselves forever. And this is where Charli XCX is. She's right here, and she's saying, don't think twice about it. There's like a gorgeous outro, great synthesizers, and it's a very emotional, strong ending, really focused on this pain of existential crisis. Everything that I love is going to leave me. But don't think twice about it. All right. So that's that. My video is now over. I forgot to get my Patreon stuff. So I'm going to go grab my Patreon stuff to thank them. But you can leave the video now unless you want to just see me walk around my house. 1 second. Okay. Almost done. My brother's over there. Dominic croissants. Okay. The dogs are jumping. And we're good. All right. You ready? So these are my Patreons. They're the people who helped me make this video. They're the people who helped me out. These are the folks who helped me buy music, and I am gonna buy the most recent album because it's super great. I really think this is a great album. Alright. I'm now gonna go have some avocado toast and some almond croissants. There's the camera.